You're listening to the Retina UK Talking Creative Arts Peer Support Group, recorded Tuesday, the 3rd of March 2026.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first Creative Arts Peer Group of the year. We started this group to encourage people to get creative and try things that they may not have tried before. So I'm Stephen Cox, and this evening we've also got Brian Coates, who is co-hosting with me. We have a guest speaker called Aaron, who will, in a minute, I think he's about, will tell you a bit about his sight loss journey and what he does as far as sculpting and artwork. Um, Brian, do you want to say anything before we hand over to Aaron?
You pretty much covered it, Steve. My name is Brian Coates, and I'd just like to welcome you all to the meeting tonight. And I'm really interested to hear what Aaron has to say.
Okay, if you're ready, Aaron, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you very much, both. Unfortunately, due to a bit of a technical, there was some mad echoing going on. So what I had prepared on another device in another room is no longer applicable. So hopefully I can manage without prompts. But I did have some audio and video materials to play. However, given that everyone, including myself, is either blind or partially blind, we can dispense with the visual material. Who needs it? After all, the world is a bit more complicated than that. So my name's Aaron McPeake. I'm based in London. I work as an artist and as a curator and as an academic researcher. I used to work in theatre lighting for many, many years. I began in the Arts Theatre in Belfast and then in the Grand Opera House. Worked at the National Theatre. I was assistant head of lighting at the Royal Opera and Royal Ballet. Worked with Sadler's Wells, European Opera, Scottish Opera, Scottish Ballet, and a long list of others. I have an autoimmune disease called Behçet syndrome, which is a very rare in this part of the world. It's common. It's also called the Silk Road disease in that it's got a very high level of incidence between Japan and Turkey, which is exactly on the latitude of the Silk Road. The disease is a syndrome, which is to say that we don't know what it is and what it does. In my case, it affects the eyes, but in many other people, it can affect other organs, including the brain. It's an inflammatory autoimmune condition, but probably the most common acute symptom is sight loss due to basically the capillaries in the macula and the capillaries in the retina and waterlogging of the retina and damage to the macula is the most common symptom. So it's degenerative. In my case, it happened over a long period of time in steps. So I was able to learn tricks, including tricks to pretend that there was nothing wrong with me in a working environment. So I used to memorize maps and plans, technical drawings, which in stage lighting contain lots and lots of numbers which relate to electrical circuits or colors or angles of the lighting, the beam angles of the lighting instruments. So I'd basically memorize all those in order that I didn't have to look and get a magnifying glass out and be caught out. So I did that for a number of years, and because of it, I was losing sight in slow little stepped increments. I was able to sort of adapt as I went along. For people that have a kind of catastrophic single episodes or much fewer episodes, then their experience is very different. But I had to give up the ghost. In 2002, I became registered blind. So I stopped working. Well, I didn't quite stop working. I cut down. Sounds like I was giving up smoking. I cut down on that, and I went back to art school. I went to Central St. Martin's and started a degree in arts and design and environment, which is something that I'd always wanted to do. Having sight loss, I didn't really fancy piano tuning, and nor did I fancy going to Japan and becoming a masseuse, or going to Spain and selling lottery tickets, which those were the kind of suggestions that were often made as to what I'd do with serious sight loss. So as I became registered legally blind, as they call it in the States, in 2002, and went back to art school, which was the best thing that I ever did. I've had a great time since. So in art school, being an older person and having had a technical background, I kind of knew how to pillage the institution, which was to get everything out of it that I possibly could. So I made or used the workshops and facilities to make everything from turning metal, turning wood, making furniture, sculpture, ceramics, glass, textiles, printing, lithography, etching. So I was kind of old and ugly enough to be able to take advantage of those facilities in the art school as an undergraduate. Now, there's an illustration that I can't have it because I'm on another device that don't have any of these files, but I was going to show you a kind of case of a Snellen chart, one which is sharp and one which indicates the kind of acuity I have, which is around about 260, which is to say I see in detail at 2 meters what the mean or average person sees at 60 meters. So I look at people in the face or make eye contact, but I can't, unless they're uncomfortably close, I don't see faces. They're just sort of smudgy shapes. So I tend to identify people by their gait, how they move, their shape, but more about a general gait, which is incredibly hard to describe. I think that the AI are now been able to kind of identify people, whereas a few years ago they just couldn't. It was far too complicated. But that's how I make faux eye contact. So most folk think, so even people that have known me for years or I worked with or still get offended when I walk past them. But I don't see them, and it's because I maintain this eye contact. And a lot of my research and my PhD was on the impact of vision loss on artists and visual artists and designers, and looking at the experience of congenitally or people that lost vision very, very early in life. They adopted different habits. You maybe are aware of people that roll their eyes, they're scanning, looking for, picking up little bits and pieces of detail, and then assembling that in their minds to establish what's actually going on in front of them. And that's actually really fascinating, because that's how perfectly sighted people see as well. When they look at a painting or a picture, they don't actually see the whole thing. They're grabbing little tiny bits of information and then piecing it together in their minds. They're making up the image. They're not actually seeing it because there's too much information in there. And I suppose that can be referenced by those trick. Some people are better than others. Those trick spot the difference kind of cartoons, but that's actually how the brain is managing what we see. And in terms of that, again, the art school, or thinking about sight, and we live in a very ocular centric society with screens, phones, televisions, computer screens. I suggest we can say that we live in a very ocular centric world, but that said, we don't really know, or people aren't aware of how sight works. And that's very disappointing. So if you speak to even a postgraduate art and design student and ask them, why is the sky blue? Like they don't know. Or ask them, how does the eye work? Again, they don't know. The rods and cones of the retina. Again, it's largely people are ignorant of it. But then I think of how we experience the world is not just through looking. You have a number of other senses, and they're not just touching, tasting, smelling. There is, we have the kinesthesia, which is about how things move. We temperature, proprioception, where is my arm in relation to the rest of my body? We know where we put our arm out. We know where our arm relates in space and in the world. But we don't teach those senses to children. They tend to be prohibitions. It's, don't look like that. Don't touch like that. So we're not encouraging. We don't teach them to listen. I would suggest that only conservatoire musicians, mechanical engineers, and hopefully anaesthetists actually learn how to listen. We don't teach it. It's, we hear things, but we don't listen. So we're bombarded with all of this, and particularly now, I think the Icelandic volcano a number of years ago, and then the pandemic, it changed our relationship to the environment. We realized there was all this stuff happening that it suddenly wasn't just happening out of the blue. It was always happening. We just couldn't hear it because of all of the racket that was going on as a consequence of cars and aircraft and the like. So I'm really passionate about the notion of multisensory engagement with things and how little we think about that. And that goes for not just appreciating artwork, but also making it. Whether you knit or you sew with textiles, or you work with wood, with chisels, or with saws, you work with glass, either in a kiln or in a blowing capacity, or you work with metals, either pouring them or welding them, or cleaning them up, grinding them, polishing them, filing them. There is that interaction. You and the stuff have to have a relationship, and you get to know each other very quickly. Sometimes annoyingly so, because you take a lump out of yourself and bleed a lot, but we do get over it. So my view about the making artwork is multisensory, and I think that should also apply to engaging with it. The current exhibition that I've been working on, which I co-curated at the Henry Moore Institute in Leeds, which is on until the 19th of April. It opened in November last year. and it's called Beyond the Visual, and it's multi-sensory modes of beholding art. There's a book of the same title, Beyond the Visual, that's available from UCL Press, and it's free to download. All of the images have alt text, so they're described, and the way that UCL Press do with the free to download is that everything is compatible with screen readers and current access software. So the book's 23 chapters. It's a bit of a lump, but it's concerning the kind of beholding work beyond the visual. So it's about audio description. There are 23 chapters, many different authors from around the world, and some of the leading theoreticians and practitioners in blind arts. So I'd recommend that you download. In fact, even if you're not going to read it, please download, because it gives us brownie points for. It's it's £50 to buy a softback and £70 for a hardback, but it's free to download. Another plug. The exhibition in Leeds at the Henry Moore Institute is, again, it's free admission. We have 5 galleries, and the 5th gallery has a 2-hour audio described show reel of artists' films. So there are 10 short films, again, audio described, which is unusual. Often artists make videos or films, but they can't afford to have them described, or they run out. Even other blind practitioners, we finish making something and it's like, oh, I just can't be doing the voiceover to. But in this case, we've managed to do that. So we think it's the first of its kind, the first exhibition of audio described artworks by blind and partially blind artists. And the other 3 galleries, there are 4 galleries. There's a study gallery has an installation of work by Fian Devi, which is collaborative, with Georgina Klieg, who is they're exploring a Richard Serra sculpture, and there are 4 audio tracks running simultaneously to 2 video tracks of images of the Richard Serra sculpture and a site of where the Richard Serra sculpture used to inhabit. So it's very much about audio description. The other 3 galleries have works including by Barry Flanagan and Henry Moore. Everyone else is still alive apart from those 2. But and everything in the exhibition can be touched, which is very unusual for, in fact, it's a first for the Institute. And it's the first major exhibition since the 1980s. In 1981, the Tate had an exhibition, and in 1987, there was an exhibition at Leeds Art Gallery. Again, Henry Moore and Barry Flanagan, their works were in, the 2 works that we have by Moore and Flanagan were in the 1987, and the 1981, the Flanagan was in that exhibition as well. But the revelation for the hands at the Tate, and then the sculpture for the blind at the Tate was only blind people could go in. So there was this exclusion of everybody else. You had to be blind. So there was something slightly, I find it a bit fishy, although I didn't visit the show, that people were watching blind people going in to be able to do something that they couldn't. So there was an exclusion there. And for our current work, we had 3 rules for this exhibition, and the publication is that the majority of works would be by blind or partially blind people. All of the works were multisensory in nature and could be touched if appropriate. And the access was at every level of the project. So it wasn't just about doing large print and sticking Braille things up. We were thinking about it in relation to the artwork that we're choosing, where it was placed, how it would relate to the other artworks. Even the email font that we used for internal, and I was the only blind member of the team, we used a 16-point font for email. So access was not just something to stick it on at the end and go, oh yeah, we better sort of, excuse me, we better do something for those people. It was very much about, it benefits everybody. I often find myself at exhibitions and I visit things with different friends, some of whom I know will like a particular exhibition and some of whom will dislike it. And they give me an audio description of what, although I have telescopes and other lenses and things, it is really useful to have someone with me because I'll miss things. And also we can have a discussion about what's there, what we're beholding. And we use the term beholding rather than viewing. But during this time of people describing things, on multiple occasions, I find that there's been a little gaggle of people following us. We're being stalked by people who are taking advantage of it, and often hear things like, "Oh, will you do that for me?" So the audio description, if it's done well, it's not just for those that can't see so much or anything at all. It's for everyone. So in this exhibition, what we've done is we've two different audio descriptions of each of the works. One was developed in advance. So the first day of the exhibition, there was audio description available. And then as soon as the exhibition opened, we had a panel of people, including a number of blind and partially blind people, who came to the exhibition and discussed the work with two facilitators, one who are both partially blind, Joe Rizonaldi and Sally Booth, who are both writers, activists, and experienced audio describers. So they then put together a text of what we recorded the discussions, and then that was, because the discussions were maybe 30, 40 minutes for each artwork, which is much too long. The really interesting points were taken out of that, and a script was put together. So a second voice was provided. The first voice that Joseph Rizonaldi created with the artists was to interview them and about the artwork. So you had the artist voice that was again edited from 40 minutes down to about 5 minutes. So you had the artist's voice describing the context of the work, the background, the material, what was exciting for them, and then that was, as I say, edited down. In the case of the dead people, we had art historians to write the piece. We couldn't really have a seance and ask Henry Moore what he thought about his mother and child. But so that's been the approach to this current exhibition. And you'll have to forgive me because, as I say, I did have on my desktop, and I work with two screens. One's a reading screen, one's a writing screen. I did have a presentation prepared, but because I'm in another room on a laptop, I'm blagging for my life. But I did bring two pieces. A lot of my work is in bell bronze, which is the metal that church bells or hand bells are made from, and it's different to ordinary sculpture bronze. Bronze is basically any copper-based alloy, but with bell bronze, it's 80% copper and 20% tin. And both of those metals are very soft and malleable, bendy. Copper you're familiar with, I'm sure, with wire and cable. So it's soft. Tin is very similar to lead, and that's soft and malleable. But when you mix them together, they become incredibly hard, and that's what gives the bell its chinginess. Or as bell founders, I used to make a lot of work at Whitechapel Bell Foundry, that closed down a few years ago after 600 years, unfortunately. But bell founders call the metal crispy because it's so brittle. That in itself makes it problematic, in that because it's so brittle, like lead crystal glass, it rings. I will get you a crystal glass just to demonstrate. So this is a crystal glass I made many years ago. I'm not sure what you can see, and this is just a soda glass that you'd be used to having. That. So that's the soda glass, which is quite high quality glass, but this is the crystal. So you can hear the difference in the sound.
The system is filtering out the sounds of the glass.
Ah, unfortunate. Okay. Well, the lead crystal glass is very chingy, and it resonates for quite a long time. With bell bronze, again, that brittleness is problematic because if you make a very large bell, the risk of it cracking is high. So what they do with big bells is to put a tiny bit of lead into the mix, less than 0.5%, but that lead creates a kind of it softens it and creates a rubber. Now this is a piece that I'm been working on this week that isn't finished. It's not tuned, but hopefully you can hear it. It's a gong pattern. Did that sound work?
No, we couldn't hear a thing, unfortunately.
Oh dear. Oh well, that's the limitations of technology. But what I was trying to demonstrate was two pieces that are identical. The first one was slightly thicker because it hasn't been finished yet, so the note was higher than the second. Because when you take, if you imagine like sanding a piece of wood, by taking material off, the pitch of the note drops. So the thicker the material, the higher the note. The thinner the material, the lower the note. Is the basic rule. With bronze, bell bronze. Now I make stuff that people can strike. So in the gallery at the Henry Moore Institute at the moment, there's 5 rings in the shape of like a wedding ring pattern, and they range from about 35 kilograms down to about half a kilo. So the way that they're laid out, it was like an ice cream cone on its side. So the largest ring being at the top of the cone, and the smallest ring being at the bottom. And those are the beholders are provided with clappers if they want to strike them. Now, I'm really interested in this business of hitting things, and it's not just about funfair, hitting it as hard as you can. It is about that you're going to get a different, a kind of reflexive experience of striking an object. That depending on where you strike it, how you strike it, you get a very different sensation. and it feeds back. Also, handling bronze, when it's ringing, even when you no longer hear it. If you actually put your hand to it and touch it, you can feel it still fizzing and moving. So the vibration continues even after you no longer can hear the sound. The thing with bronze is that when you handle it, the metal reacts with the oils in your skin and leaves a scent. So the more you engage with it, then the smellier the consequences of your interaction. So you can look at it, you can touch it, you can hear it, and you can smell it. But also because you can physically interact with it, you can stand in different places. In relation to the object, you don't have to just be behind a rope looking at something. So what we've done, again, to defy that convention of roped off sculptures or roped off artworks, we've put dark gray carpet underneath the plinths, or when objects are against the wall, along the wall. And rather than it being a rope that says "do not enter" or a piece of wood on the floor that is telling you're not welcome, the carpet, you can feel it with your stick or with your feet. The carpet is there as an invitation. So it's the exact opposite of what the usual gallery is telling you. Do not approach, do not touch. We welcome you to touch. Obviously, there are limits. We don't want people sort of swinging on things or really playing it like a fun fair. But we think that in time, if institutions adopt this more accessible way of engaging with artwork, then people will become a bit more experienced, and as a consequence, the whole experience of visiting galleries will be better. And another thing we've noticed is that people have to spend a long time with the work. In museums such as the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art in New York, a lot of research they've done would suggest that the average footfall in front of a painting is 7 seconds. That's the average. Now, but we've found, even in the Henry Moore Institute, which is a relatively small gallery, that people are spending 2 or 3 hours in the gallery. They're listening to the audio descriptions, they're touching, they're circumnavigating the pieces, they're going away, they're coming back. So that there is a whole different time relationship with the gallery experience. As I mentioned, that my PhD research was about, the title was very grand, called "Nibbling at Clouds: The Visual Artist Encounters Adventitious Blindness." But there is a humorous reason for each one of those. But the idea of nibbling at clouds, eating clouds, is sort of slightly absurd, but it does set down a challenge. But I was interviewing other visual artists, some of whom have sadly passed, and also congenitally blind people, and those that have been congenitally deaf or have come to lose their hearing, just to see if there was any sort of parallels. You'll be maybe pleased or not to note that there wasn't a great deal of parallel between hearing loss and sight loss, except for there was a gender disparity in that women found hearing loss much more significant and traumatic than men did. Some would say that if you lose your sight, you lose the world, but if you lose your hearing, you lose people. So I thought that was an interesting shift in terms of gender. But with sight loss, and the thing that dealing with other artists, one of my advisors was a psychiatrist. The ethics of interviewing vulnerable people in modern universities is quite, and I think art schools are particularly paranoid because they're not used to it. So I had a psychiatrist advising me on that. And probably I didn't make much of it at the time, but one of the interesting findings was that he had basically taken into care some elderly people that had lost sight and were suffering from very acute Charles Bonnet syndrome, which is the involuntary hallucinations of when your eyes are open and closed. However, the artists that I interviewed that were encountering Bonnet syndrome were going, yeah, that's great, isn't it? they were finding this really exciting and interesting. Whereas other people were quite fearful of that. So I thought that was a finding that I could have made a bit more of. But I also, one of the works that we have in the audio described films is by John Hull. It's a New York Times edition, so it's about a 16-minute excerpt of his film. And maybe some of you are familiar with. He was a theologian that wrote extensively about vision loss. Now, I remember from reading his texts that he lost the ability to apprehend physical visual objects, and he just couldn't imagine what things were anymore in that visual mind's eye sense. And for me, I found that although I'd worked in theatre and in lighting for years and years, I found that my ability to apprehend or to make things spin in my imagination. So I'd say, right, what is that object like? Well, what happens when you turn it? What does it look like if it's spinning or turning or twisting? I got better at that, probably because I'd practiced lying or masking for many years. But I found that to be really fascinating. But then when I looked at the data from the population, perfectly sighted population as a whole, I found out that the same thing is true, that there are some people that can apprehend objects and can think about them in complicated ways, and there are people that can't. So it's got nothing to do with your ability to see. It's much more about a mental processing, which I think all of the senses are not working in isolation. And in history, and we're going back to the ancient Greeks, they were looking at vision, at hearing, at touch, at smell, at taste, but they were looking at them in isolation. And we don't experience the world in that way. The example I try to give to students is of the fairground when you're on a roller coaster or one of those insanely scary rides that you would have to handcuff me to get me to be on one of them. But you don't just experience the sound, the sight. You're hearing it, you're seeing it, you're smelling it. There's the popcorn, there's the noise, there's the wind, there's the temperature, there's your gravity. Your insides of your organs are being sloshed about. So you're getting that kinesthetic, and you're thinking about where you are in space as you're screaming your head off. So the senses are not experienced in isolation. And I think it's really important to remember that. What we tend to look at, again, ocular-centric expression, we tend to look at listening, but we tend to prioritize. So if there's a very loud bang on the street, then that will be the thing that will take priority in terms of our memory. But there will be all these other things happening at the same time as well. And I think the world is much more interesting if we think about those things that they're acting in concert and not just on their own. Forgive me. There was I did have plan of action there. The work that I'm trying to do next is to expand this practice of the access being practice, not just something we stick on at the end to keep those people happy. That it, as I say, it benefits everyone. You know, the example of giving the announcements on the bus as to what the next stop is going to be was introduced for blind and partially blind people. Everybody uses it. If you make a space good for a wheelchair, then you make it good for a person with a pram. So this notion that access is somehow just for this sort of ghettoized group of people, because they've got something wrong with them, like they're seeing their mobility or their hearing. I think that's a really bad approach. We can make access fun and really useful, and not just for those of us that have acute issues with vision or other things. Forgive me. The work in terms of the culturally, what I'd really like to do is to make institutions like the RNIB, guide dogs, you know, other charitable groups like the Wellcome Collection, Wellcome Trust, to be a bit more joined up in their approach to that, and also to be a bit more international as well, because it's in lots of ways the UK has very and is viewed in a very progressive way, but there are other things happening in other countries, in Spain and Canada particularly. Now in Australia, there is a bit of movement. For a lot of other European countries, things are not that great in the cultural sense and in the cultural sector. And this does not just go for, obviously I'm biased because vision is, or lack of, is my first concern. But I only, for example, recently discovered what was a changing places toilet was, or what changing places toilets are, and how many new builds do not include them. So that excludes people with certain disabilities being able to go to the building at all, which is a real shame. So I think there's an opportunity to widen stuff out, and get this message out that it doesn't need to be super expensive. Just include it at the beginning. Then it isn't expensive. And that goes for certainly for the changing places toilets issue. It's not that expensive to put in from a plan zero stage. To retrofit, it costs a fortune, and it's really disruptive to the building. So those things can be done relatively cheaply. Similarly with there's a lot of good stuff happening with QR codes, with Navi lenses, and technologies you're probably more familiar with than I am. There is a lot of good stuff happening, but we're not joining it up. It's still in the let's accessibility rather than just making things accessible. And I think there's a distinction there. So for me, the museums, the museum sector, the galleries, the theatres, all cultural events and spaces can be much, much more rich. And the same goes for the making of things, that there are a lot of people out there that, and I know a number of blind artists who want their work to be touched, but a lot of galleries and museums prohibit it. So the more that we can make their wishes kind of come to fruition, then the better it will be.
Right, Aaron, we're pushing on for time now, so can
Marvelous.
I just open the floor to anybody that wants to ask a few questions? Is there anybody who wants to ask Aaron anything? Oh, Sue, yeah. Would you like to go ahead, Sue?
Hi. When you sort of say listening to the audio description with the artworks, what do you actually mean by that?
Well, alongside the artwork, there is a didactic plate, which is to say it's got the title in print, the date, the material, the artist, and then we have that in Braille. We also then have a QR code, which will have two audio descriptions. You can also access those audio descriptions of the work by borrowing a headset with a control pad.
Mm-hmm. The other thing was that so pre-COVID, I always remember, you could go to a gallery and you could ask for what you're saying there, sort of tape and the headphones, and you could listen to a description of the exhibition or the pieces of work, and anybody would pick those up, whether they were sighted or not. And then with COVID, that all sort of seemed to stop. And then you go to an art gallery and you suddenly go in and you realise you couldn't engage with any of it because you wouldn't be able to open sight, depending on what vision you've got left. You've either got to be with someone who you can ask questions to, or you kind of you miss out on a lot of information, really.
Well, this is another point, and I, as I say, my presentation was on another computer in another room, but because of problems, I wasn't there. I was doing it a bit on the hoof. But one of the things that my work is made of bell bronze, which is copper and tin alloy. Now, the Smithsonian and at Southampton University, they did a study on viruses on copper alloys, and they don't exist. They cannot exist. They get machine gunned by the free electrons of the bronze. However, my colleague Ken Wilder, his wife is a midwife, and then she looked into the research that was done around COVID. That most of the work that they did was in London Underground, London Transport, or Transport for London places, railway underground stations, the rubber hole handles on the escalator. they did not find any virus. So the myth, it is a myth. Viruses, and particularly SARS-2, COVID-19, were transmitted in the air. They do not get transmitted through objects. So that was a really fascinating thing. I was hoping to blow my own trumpet because I do make work with copper-based alloy, but it turns out that actually none of it, you're not going to get a virus from, or certainly not those respiratory viruses from touching anything. So it was just an over enthusiastic kind of.
But it makes a lot of difference if you can touch the objects. You know, even if it's just one or two objects, it just, you know, you get so much information in a tactile way, which you can't describe really.
Yeah, exactly.
You just do. It's just amazing, really.
And Henry Moore and Barbara Hepworth, both they both said, you know, these things are to be touched. You don't know what rough is by looking at it. You don't know what smooth or cold is by looking at it. You have to touch to experience those qualities.
Which is why, like, when you go into an art gallery, it seems really odd. People just walk round, and that's all they're doing is looking and they don't feel they can touch anything. It's quite odd, really.
It's a shame, especially when the artists want them to touch it. But if you come to the Henry Moore Institute, and hopefully other venues in the not too distant will be hosting work that you can touch and listen to and smell and all of the above, then I think we're hoping to trying to make some inroads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, is there anybody else that wants to ask Aaron any questions? Because we're getting on for time now, and we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon.
I've got a quick question for Aaron, if it's all right, Steve. I just do you incorporate your metalwork into any other materials? Like my particular passion is woodwork and stuff like that there, and I'd love to incorporate some metalwork into it, or even fabric work into the wee things that I make, you know, just because there is so much more, you know. You make something functional, but you can make it entertaining and stuff like that there by adding not just upholstery, but putting fabrics into the, you know, the spaces in the old pieces that you're making, you know, or putting
I mean, I'm actually working on a. I wasn't actually doing anything with chisels or drills, but I was putting a bit of bronze into a lump of oak today. So no, I do love that. I mean, glass and metal. Sometimes it goes wrong because they don't like each other. You know, they putting metal into hot glass. It looks great for a week, and then you come down one morning and it's just a pile of splinters. But no, I love to kind of mix it up, and I think all materials have they have all something very lovable about them. Just the you know, that they've got different temperatures, they've just got different qualities, and even in the sound, you know, we've all whacked railings with sticks, or, you know, the promenade down at the seaside, and you hit those metal and put your ear to it.
That's the kind of thing I'm interested in at the moment, is just sort of incorporating them into something, you know, just so that it might be a seat or something like that there, but there's a little sound aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
Either the wind will blow it, or you can tap it yourself if you want to, you know, just to get that.
There was a piece I did. I don't have it anymore, but because I need an aircraft hangar to keep all this stuff, but making a set of railings that were tuned. So if you ran your stick along them, you played a tune, you know, which isn't that difficult to do. The mathematics of it are fairly straightforward. So you can tune things, you know. You could make a bench that would have you know, different either tubes or solid bar, but each of them will make a sound. But yeah, I love to do that. And the crystal glasses, shame it doesn't work on the laptop, but the crystal glasses that I made, and I've a larger crystal pieces, they make great noises.
That's where I got the idea from. There's these musical gates around down the coast, down the northwest.
Right.
Yeah, they're functional. They're gates, they work just fine, but they're actually tuned so that when the wind blows across them, they play various.
Oh yeah, like the bottle, the Helmholtz effect.
Yeah.
But
Thanks,
there's an amazing, again, this thing about artwork, the cave paintings in Lascaux and other, so 40, 50,000 years ago, you only find the cave paintings in spaces in the caves that have got a really amazing resonance. You don't find the paintings unless you've got that sound quality. But also in places like Newgrange, those chambers are tuned. So they knew about this 5,500 years ago. I mean, theaters, again, which we seem to have forgotten for a lot of the 20th century. Opera houses from late 19th, early 20th century are beautiful acoustic. Then anything that was built between 1930 or 1940 and 1970 or 80, pretty dreadful, because they'd forgotten about the acoustic qualities of buildings. But the Neolithic, I can't remember the name of it. It was a BBC documentary made in the 80s. That's still available on YouTube. Sounds of the Stone Age.
Right.
It's fascinating, and it's one you can listen to. You don't need to look at the pictures. The pictures don't really. It could be a radio broadcast. Sounds of the Stone Age. But you only get it on YouTube.
Aaron, we could talk about this all night, but I'm afraid the time's got on.
Thank
you very much for talking to us this evening. It's been extremely interesting. And Mark will process the audio and get it out on the YouTube channel. And I'm sure he'll do a write-up about all the bits that you've spoken about and promote your exhibition as well.
Thank you. And apologies for the... as I say, I was not prepared on this machine, whereas I was the other.
Made it interesting. Right, so
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Have you got anything to say, Brian, at all, just before we go, or not?
What's that?
Have you got any final comments, Brian? Or
no? That's great. I got my questions answered, and I'm going to check out that Sounds of the Stone Age.
How long's the exhibition on for?
Till 19th of April.
Oh, well, we'll definitely try and come see it.
Great. And as I say, the book is available for free to download. Beyond the Visual from UCL Press.
Okay, all right. Well,
thank you very much.
I'd like to wish everybody a good evening, and we'll see you all for the next time. Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Aaron.
Take care. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this Retina UK peer group recording. If you have any questions or queries regarding its content, or you would like to leave us some feedback, then please do get in touch. You can contact us via a helpline on 0300 111 4000. Call the office team on 01280 821 334, or alternatively, you can contact us via email at services@retinauk.org.uk. If you are interested in creating your own peer support group and assisting Retina UK to grow our peer support group network and join our amazing team of volunteers, then please do get in touch by contacting us at info@retinauk.org.uk and speak to a member of staff to see how you can get involved. Thanks again for listening, and please stay tuned for more peer support group recordings coming throughout this year. Take care and all the best. Bye for now.